So now I remember something about the night you proposed to her, I believe. There was a story there.
Yeah, there is, and some of it I can't tell on
Okay.
video.
Okay.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I really was not following anything except my own desires, and
Yeah.
I had been really. I've made a horse's tail of myself.
Yeah.
Um, at that time, I was drinking a lot and
Yeah.
and doing things that we don't need to tell
Yeah.
about here. But I really made a horse's tail out of myself. And so when I get back with her, she's cooled off.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm getting ready to graduate now. I'm in my senior year, and
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to graduate, and I know I'm going to be moving as a teacher, and I feel like she's going to be my wife, but I really made a mess here. And we were stopped at an intersection. We had just been up to visit her parents in Owensville, in the house where we now live. And we came back, and it was pretty cool on her end, and rightfully so. And I thought, what can I do? What can I do to turn this around? And I thought, it was a Carl thought, I know, but it's just the truth. I thought, I know I want her to be my wife. This is the time. And so she's not hardly speaking to me, Pastor Wayne. She's not hardly speaking to me. And we're sitting at a stoplight. There's Oak Hill Road in Lynch in Evansville, Indiana. To a few people, they might know where that was. And it's northbound. And I look at her and the light's red, and I said, would you like to get married? Would you marry me? She didn't even look at me. She said, that'd be okay. And I said, what about June? And I think she said something like, okay. I mean, that's it. And I said, well, we better go back and ask your folks. She said, okay. I mean, there's still no gushy going on. And so we drove right back. It's about 30 miles. We just been there. Drove back, and when we walked in the house, her mother saw us, and her mother knew in her heart what was up. Her mother had an intuition about those things. When we first met, I was dating the other girl, and Kathy and this other girl were friends, and Kathy asked her, my girlfriend at the time, would you and Mike take me home to Owensville on the way to Mount Vernon? Well, Owensville's like here, and Mount Vernon's over here. I mean, it's like, it's not on the way. But I didn't know that. And so they asked me, and I said, sure. So we're driving way out of our way, and we get to Owensville. When we go in the house, here's why I'm telling you this. When we walk in the house, her mother is standing there, and I don't remember that there was anything particularly, can't tell you really what was said. But when I left, my girlfriend and I left, Kathy's mother said to her, that's the one for you.
That's amazing.
Yeah. No earthly reason to say such a thing. Yeah. And Kathy said, oh, no, Mom, and all the reasons why it wouldn't work. So anyway, now we're back. Now we're coming I'm coming to ask for her hand. Her mother sees me, and she just out of nerves, she just starts talking. She just talking, nonstop talking. Just who knows what she's even talking about. She's just so nervous. And I'm standing there, and I'm kind of nervous, and I don't know what's going on in Kathy's mind. We go back to see her dad because we want to ask them together. But I wanted to ask her father. And her dad is watching the TV, and he hardly takes his eyes off the TV because he realizes what's happening too. And he's not sure how to deal with it.
That's how he's dealing with
it.
So
his dealing with it is just to sit and watch TV. And so anyway, I asked and in a proper way, which is just a miracle of the Lord that I would do that. I mean, I was really pretty much a hooligan. And to think that I would get anything right, it's kind of a wonder. But that time the Lord helped, and I did. And so, they gave us their blessing, and we came home. And Kathy began to warm up, but just a little bit. And so I knew that that was my only ace in the hole, and I knew you could only use it once. But by the grace of God, I don't think I made a jackass of myself to that extent since. But that's how we got started. So that was in 1972.
Okay.
I graduated June 11th. Then we got married June 12th. And I started teaching school June 19th in a summer band program. So I mean, there was just no. We wanted to do it quickly before her friends. Everybody leaves to go home because it's our college friends. We want to be in the way, sure. And so we didn't have a. I had not been in our church for a long time, so we didn't. So she said, "Well, could we go back to where?" my mom and where my mom goes, and I was, well, sure. To me, a church is one's good as another in my mind at that time. Mm-hmm. And so we go to the Owensville Methodist Church, and that was in the end of the 60s, early 70s, and it was kind of the thing at the time that you would kind of write your own vows. Now later on, it got kind of it just threw all tradition out, but for us, the only thing that was going to be uniquely us is we asked, and then the pastor was nice and said, sure, So I don't remember what she said to me in the service. I really don't. Mm-hmm. But I remember what I said to her. I said so, and I know looking back, the hand of God had to have been on me for me to have said what I said. Yeah. And I said in my part of the vow, and I pray that I'll be the husband to you that my father was to my mother, and if God would grant us children, I mean, that was just not something I would have said. And if God grants us children, I pray that I'll be the father to our children that my father was to me. Mm-hmm. Later on, much later, we won't tell the salvation story now, but that stayed with me. Right. That promise that I made stayed with me, even though my lifestyle and all that was just absolutely wrong. I remember that moment in time when I made a solemn vow that I would be that kind of a husband to my wife that my father was to my mother, and that if God granted us children, I would be the father to my children that my father was to me.
It's like a moment of inspiration there.
Yeah. That I don't get any credit for at all. I don't deserve any credit. But God, by His Spirit, now I know, by His Spirit, He embedded that in me, and I was never able to shake it. Yeah. So when, in a few years, when we as we start having children, and the kids are old enough to go to Sunday school, we're not going to church. And somebody comes by and wants to take the kids to church, and I'm just glad to get them to church. And Kathy began to go to church, just to go to church. There wasn't a lot going on in her heart either, I don't think. Mm-hmm. But every time the kids would go to church and I would be not going to church, it was just, it's in you. I think, this call that God has for everybody, it's in us. We don't want to receive it. We don't want to acknowledge it, but it's just there. And I didn't come to the Lord until I was 33. So I had from the age of 21 to 33 to live in this absolute knowledge of a failure to do what I promised before the Lord and her that I would do. And so God's given us a wonderful marriage, but it's the grace of God that we are ever married in the first place.
That's a fascinating story. So next time we'll pick up and we'll talk about the years leading up to your salvation.